Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Morning Musings and Now TV. I appreciate you being with me so very, very much. Let me get this over here. All right, just about forgot to get my mic right straight up in front of me. All righty, well, here we are, December the 27th, 2 days after Christmas. I do hope that you had a fantastic Christmas. Uh, Hope Santa brought you exactly what you wanted. Yeah. And here we are facing the new year. In just 4 days, I'm going to be celebrating. Yeah, I will. I'll be celebrating my 75th birthday. I got to tell you, never did I think when I was a young man, never did I think that I would live to celebrate 75 years. Now, there's 4 days left. Maybe I won't. But I was one of those guys that never envisioned myself even living to be 50 years old. I was a typical teenager that when my dad was in his 50s, I thought he was ancient. Whoa, whoa. And unfortunately, my father passed away at 62. The good thing about it is that I had matured to a certain extent and had come to realize how wise and wonderful my father was. And we enjoyed two incredible, incredible years of relationship. And I thank God to this day for those 2 years in which I finally woke up to the reality that my father wasn't near as dumb as I thought he was. By the way, he was really, really smart and really, really wise. So, anyway, this is holiday season. This is the 27th. And as I said, 4 days left until December 31st. I will not be producing a program for the 31st. I'm going to take a few days off and relax before hitting again after the first of the year. So let me not only wish you a belated Merry Christmas, a couple of days ago, but let me also wish you a very, very happy new year, obviously for all of my U.S. viewers. All right. Not everyone celebrates the turn of the new year like we do in America. And if you're in Australia, it's, the calendar is not the same as ours. Okay. Now, before I proceed, I want to remind you, I made a very special offer last week, a book special. And that book special is, and we've only got a few days. Now, you want to take advantage of this. My book, These Are the Days in Which All Things Must Be Fulfilled, based on Luke chapter 21 and verse 22, and Temple to Telos, an examination of the significance of the first century temple to eschatology. Now, if you purchase both of those books separately, it costs you about $47, almost $48 with shipping included. But for the month of December, only 4 days left. If you purchase those two books, you go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. There's a banner right up at the very top. Your full total delivered price, now this is for U.S. orders only for 4 more days, $30. But that's not the end of it. As I said last week, if you're watching this program for the rest of 2024, U.S. orders only, when you order the two-book special, and again, you have watched this on YouTube, and you've watched this on NowTV, if you send me a note saying, hey, Don, I saw the special offer for All Things Fulfilled and Temple to Telos, I saw it on NowTV, I will add, totally free of charge, my book, Can You Believe Jesus Said This? So you're getting extra free stuff. Take advantage of it. Only 4 days left. Now I got to get into the lesson this morning because I've got a lot I want to share with you. Now remember, we are discussing the challenge of Christ. Jesus said, John chapter 10, 37, if I do not do the works which my Father has given me, do not believe me. Do not believe me for my words' sake. Believe me for my works. If you do not believe me, believe the works, to know that I am in the Father and the Father is in me. So what this means, purely and simply, is that when Jesus made a prediction, and he said it was going to happen within a certain chronological framework, if he did not keep his word, then he fails his own challenge. I've had 2 debates, formal debates, just this year with atheists. One who was a former Christian, the other one was never a Christian. But both of those men affirmed the same identical thing. Jesus lied because he never came back when he said he was going to, or he failed because he never came back like he said he was going to. By the way, both men failed miserably to sustain their arguments. Now, we're dealing here with the indisputable, irrefutable fact that the New Testament writers and Jesus, of course, emphatically, repeatedly, explicitly said that Jesus is coming at the end of the age on the clouds of heaven with power, with great glory, with his angels to reward every man in the kingdom, was going to be in the first century. It is absolutely remarkable to me, ladies and gentlemen, just this morning. Now, I am filming this on Saturday, December the 14th. Just this morning, I was involved in a rather lengthy discussion with a former preterist. Now, I want you to catch the power of what I'm about to say and how ridiculous it is, the lengths to which people will go to sustain a futurist eschatology. This former preterist says there is not one single New Testament passage that uses the terminology of, behold, I come quickly, the coming of the Lord is drawn near, the end of all things has drawn near, the one in a very, very little while, the one who is coming will come and will not tarry. These things must shortly come to pass. The time has arrived. Not one of those passages, and there are many, many more, obviously, not one of those passages indicates, signifies, communicates genuine, objective nearness and imminence. Not one of them. Now, this same former preterist, I asked him a following question. In non-eschatological passages, when the feast of the Jews had drawn near, John chapter 7, was that communicating genuine, objective, temporal imminence? Why, of course. And I asked him if in non-eschatological text, that is, texts that were not predicting the coming of the Lord, judgment, resurrection, end of the age, kingdom, etc., and yet, in those non-eschatological passages, both Jesus and the New Testament writers use the same precise Greek words in the same conjugations in passages that predicted the coming of the Lord, the judgment, the resurrection, the kingdom, the end of all things. The question was, in non-eschatological texts did all of those words, terms, phrases convey genuine imminence? And this fellow said, yes. Did those same words, terms, and phrases in eschatological text ever communicate, even once, genuine objective imminence? And the answer was no. Ladies and gentlemen, you will not find a clearer, more glaring, stunning, and illegitimate case of eisegesis. How do you arbitrarily, and I would add capriciously, determine, well, yeah, pardon me, at hand, coming soon, quickly, shortly, in non-eschatological text? Well, of course it conveys imminence. But now if it's talking about the coming of the Lord, judgment, resurrection, no. No, absolutely does not communicate nearness. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, as a friend of mine named Jack Scott is famous for saying, that doesn't even make good nonsense. I have challenged this former preterist. Show me a single Greek lexicon. Show me a Greek commentator who agrees with this statement. And you know what he does? Well, Preston, of course, you're inconsistent. You use all of these commentators, who are all, by the way, world-class scholars, in contrast to him. And he says, you cherry pick their comments, but you know very good and well, not one of them is a full preterist. And my response just this morning was this: evidently you have lost or arbitrarily rejected, this is not a direct quote, I'm just giving you the gist of what I said. You have lost your understanding that there is a difference between linguistic definitions and interpretation. If he was anywhere, and you'll have to excuse me for being so blunt here, if he would be anywhere near close to honest, he would accept what these scholars say about the definitions of the words, and he would recognize that those same identical scholars say, yes, this language was indicating the imminence of the coming of the Lord, judgment and resurrection, but these same scholars say Jesus was wrong. He lied. He failed. So do you see what this former preterist is doing? He said, oh, Preston, if you're going to take the linguistic definition of these Greek scholars, then you've got to take their futurist, because a lot of these scholars, they will turn around and say, well, Jesus failed, so the kingdom offer has been postponed. And it's still the hope of the church today. Well, that's a violation of the linguistics which those scholars themselves gave. Now, I've got to hurry here, but I just had to share with you how utterly ridiculous, and yes, indeed, dishonest, in the way that this former preterist is attempting to deal with the actual linguistics. Now, he does not take, number one, absolutely, positively, he categorically rejects their definition of the Greek words. Then, he categorically rejects how they apply those linguistics, because they apply those linguistics to the imminent expectation of the coming of the Lord, the judgment, resurrection, and he cherry picks any statement that they might then say, well, the coming of the Lord is still in our future. And he says, oh, see, Preston, you're cherry picking what they say. You're taking their quotes of the imminence of the statements. You're rejecting what they say about Jesus' failure. And you're rejecting what they say about a futurist coming of the Lord. That's right. Because I don't believe they lied. I don't believe they failed. And I believe they were being inconsistent in their own application of the linguistics. Huge, huge difference here, ladies and gentlemen. And yet this former preterist is not honest enough to acknowledge that difference. Why won't he accept their statements that these things will shortly come to pass? And that's what these words, terms, and phrases mean, but the prediction failed. No, he rejects that and cherry picks a passage over here in which those scholars say, oh yeah, this is a futurist event. The inconsistency here is stunning, but I've got to go on. Okay, so I've been sharing with you how Jesus, not only Jesus, but the Tanakh, speaks eloquently and illustrates it over and over and over again that the coming of the Lord was never supposed to be a literal, visible, physical event of God coming out of heaven on literal clouds. I had a, quote, scholar just the other day say, well, the problem with preterists is they're so naively ignorant because they seem to think there's only one definition of the day of the Lord. And it's the same in every single passage, being AD 70. I couldn't believe what I was reading. And I wrote back and I said, that is simply a blatant misrepresentation and mischaracterization of what preterists believe. I don't know if a single preterist believes that. What we do believe, however, is that there was a day of the Lord in Isaiah chapter 19, described as the Lord coming on the clouds, riding into Egypt, and it was the destruction of Egypt in the day of the Lord at the hands of Sargon, king of Assyria. I believe that Isaiah chapter 34 predicted the destruction of Edom, a destruction described as a time of the dissolution of the cosmos, the earth burning up. And I know that Edom was destroyed in 583 BC, according to Malachi chapter 1, verse 2. But heaven and earth was not literally, visibly, physically and visibly destroyed. It's metaphoric language. Same language, day of the Lord. Same language, heaven and earth passing away. But preterists do not apply those prophecies to AD 70. Folks, why do some futurists think it necessary to misrepresent, mischaracterize what preterists actually believe? But this is what I've experienced for years and years and years now. They can't meet and they cannot honestly answer the questions and the arguments of preterists, and so they make stuff up, they mischaracterize, they pervert and distort what we as preterists say. Listen, folks, if you cannot honestly represent what preterists say to refute us, maybe you ought to look in the mirror. But I must go on. I had a long way to go this morning, and I knew I wasn't going to get there. Okay, so I've shared with you the Matthew 16, 27, and 28. Jesus said his parousia was going to be of the same nature as the coming of the Lord in the Old Testament. Well, here's what I've demonstrated over and over and over again. In the Old Testament, you cannot find a single example of a literal, visible, physical coming of God out of heaven. Not one. Here is Jesus who said his coming to judge all men in the kingdom was going to be in the same manner. I've shared with you John chapter 5, 21 to 23, where Jesus said, "From henceforth the Father judges no one, but has committed all judgment to the Son, that all men might honor the Son. In the same way, they honor the Father." Wow, that's such a Christologically important text. You know, Jesus said, Isaiah said, Isaiah 43, "I am God and there is none else. I will not give my glory to another." And yet here Jesus is saying, the Father gave the judgment prerogative to the Son that men might honor him as in the same way they honor the Son. That's the Father giving honor to the Son. That means the Son is God. Sorry, no way out of that. Simply no way out of it. God gave judgment prerogative to the Son in order that men might give glory and honor to the Son in the same way they give it to the Father. So God's intent and purpose was to give glory to the Son in the same way that he receives glory. Okay, so Jesus said, the Son can do nothing of himself but what he sees the Father do. Now remember, folks, and I closed with this last week, Jesus is talking about judging. That's Matthew 16, 27 and 28. The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels and shall reward every man according to his works. But wait a minute. That coming in the judgment of all men is the time of the coming of the kingdom in its consummated glory. But the coming of the kingdom in its consummated glory is the time of the judgment of the living and the dead. 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1 and 2. Paul, writing to Timothy, says, "I charge you therefore before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who is about to judge the living and the dead at his appearing and judgment." Appearing, epiphany, judgment, kingdom, resurrection. And he was about to do it. Folks, this is incredible. But wait a minute. How did Jesus say? Matthew 16, 27, 28, John 5. How did Jesus say he was going to come in that kingdom, in that judgment, and in that resurrection? John 5, 22 and 23. Oh, he said he was going to come in judgment, same way he had seen the Father judge. The Father had never come literally, visibly, and bodily. He was going to come in the glory of the Father, in judgment, in the kingdom, in the resurrection. Now, in the time that I have left this morning, and I won't apologize for going over that territory again, I just have to keep driving home that Jesus was talking about his coming in judgment, in the resurrection, in the kingdom, not as in a literal, visible, bodily manner. And yet his coming would be described as the decreation of language, or in decreation language. It would be described as almost end of the world language, but was never intended to be speaking of the end of the material cosmos. Just simply wasn't intended to be used that way. Now, I want to go to 2 Corinthians chapter 4, because this is a passage that is commonly overlooked in discussions about the nature of the coming of the Lord, judgment, and resurrection. Now, in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, Paul discusses the transformation from the old covenant glory of Moses and the law to the new covenant glory of Jesus. Now, don't forget this, ladies and gentlemen. The transfiguration was a vision, Matthew chapter 17, verse 10 and following, of the second coming of Christ. 2 Peter chapter 1, 16 and following. We have not followed cunningly devised fables when we made known to you the power and the parousia of our Lord Jesus Christ. For we were with him on the mount. We witnessed a vision of the parousia when we were with him on the mount. So, the transfiguration was a vision of the second coming of Christ. But wait a minute. The transfiguration was a vision of covenant transformation, because Moses and Elijah appeared. And Peter said, Lord, it's good for us to be here. Let's build 3 tabernacles, one for Moses, one for Elijah, one for you. And Moses and Elijah disappear. And the voice from heaven, the Both Kol, said, because Jesus was left alone, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Him, that's in the emphatic mode in the Greek, him here. Meaning, in other words, the time of Moses and the prophets is passing away. See, it was fading away. Now, Jesus and his new covenant is who you will hear. He is the authority. He's the final prophet. The new covenant and the arrival of the new covenant is defined as the second coming of Christ in the transfiguration. That's 2 Corinthians chapter 3. That's the lead-in to chapter 4. As Paul said, speaking of the Old Testament glory, the Old Covenant, or the glory of the Old Covenant, and the glory, surpassing glory of the new. We, through the Spirit, are being transformed from glory to glory. Now, I've only got time to read the following, 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Now, remember, the Old Covenant was a covenant of death, New Covenant, covenant of life. Transformation, therefore, from death to life. 2 Corinthians chapter 4. We do not faint, but though our outward man perish, yet our inward man is renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, works for us in a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. We do not look at the things that are seen, but at the things that are unseen. That will be in 2 weeks. See you there.